The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.
I'd like to welcome all of you here tonight to this special board meeting. This will be the last board meeting, I think, for most of us, or many of us. We have the first item on our official agenda is the approval of the official agenda. We do have a few items that are consent suggested.
Would you like to hear them?
I would. Are you prepared to give them to us?
I am.
Excellent.
Mr. Mayor, Board, for your consideration for possible placement on the consent agenda, we would offer the following items. Under Board Business, Roman numeral 10, number F, Roman numeral 10F. These are items for possible placement on the consent agenda. Roman numeral 11, Airport, item 1. Roman numeral 11, item F1, Engineering and Streets. Roman numeral 11, item H1, hiring of police officers. And Roman numeral 11, item J, Public Services, number 1. So these items for consideration for placement on the consent agenda.
Make that motion. Official approval of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor and Board, I would move then approval of the official agenda with the placement of the items enumerated on the consent agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion with a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those disapprove say nay. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of the City Board of Aldermen for June the 23rd?
Mayor and Board, I move approval of the minutes from June 23rd with corrections provided to Tammy. Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Passes. Brings us comments by the mayor and the Board of Aldermen. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Rodney Favor over here today for being sworn in as our new judge, city judge, and may you have the fortune to have 33 years of participation.
Thank you.
Would like to congratulate the Starkville Little Theater, Community Theater for winning their national recognitions. I think they had 3 awards that they won, and congratulations goes to our Little Theater group that represented us, and I was pleased to see so much statewide recognition from the state, the governor's office, etc. I'd like to make an announcement on July 4th. There will be fireworks on the grounds of the Sportsplex on Lynn Lane beginning at 9 o'clock. They'll light up the sky, so be sure that you go for that. First item, the next item we have is that of public appearances. Citizen comments. Anyone who'd like to make a comment this time, if you limit yourself 3 minutes, we will start with that.
I just wanted, and I would have called you all individually, but this has been such a quick timeline, I didn't have time to do that. But I just wanted you to know, I happened to be here last week when y'all were talking about the rescoping of the Lynn Lane bike path, and I just wanted y'all to know that I'm on the Starkville Park and Recreation Commission, and several years ago, before I got involved with that group, and some of my cohorts who might be here may be able to speak better than I on this topic, but there was a community-wide survey that was done to get a better feel and understanding for the priorities that the community had and the types of amenities they wanted to see at our parks and recreation facilities. And one of the things that they had listed in a list of 10 or 11 priorities was a walking track with rest stations at McKee and or Sportsplex. So I know last week some of y'all thought it was terribly negative that instead of going from point A to point B, we were now looking at a loop around the Sportsplex and through in or around McKee. But I think I know a lot of people are disappointed that it has changed so much, but I still think it would be used just as much as the original plan by the community, and I think it would still be a great project, heavily used, and apparently from what was done before I got involved, it is something that the community has wanted. So before you vote to nix it, if that was the way you were leaning, I wish you would try to find more about that survey and consider that that is something that the community wanted. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak? Yes, sir.
Milo Burnham from Ward 2. I just want to say thank you to you, Mr. Mayor, and to the board for the past 4 years for working so hard for the city of Starkville and for listening to me during that time period when I was present at the city meetings. Thank you. You may not have always agreed with one another, but I think you always had the city of Starkville in your heart, the betterment of the city.
Thank you very much. Very kind of you. Anyone else?
Sure. I'm Deborah Brenner, and I live in Ward 6, I think. Although I used to live in Ward 5, and I stay in the same house. I'm the president of Starkville in Motion, and I'm just here briefly to reiterate Mary Love's comments about the public desire for facilities at the Sportsplex and McKee Park for additional walking and a multi-purpose path there. Starkville in Motion wrote the grant for the original Lynn Lane, and for whatever reason, we are where we are now, fighting some pretty firm deadlines, and we need to put this on city land if we're going to build it at all. Last year, Starkville in Motion sat down and developed a list of their top 10 sidewalk priorities, and among those top 10 was increasing the sidewalk footage at McKee Park and the Sportsplex so that mothers could use that and family members could use that facility for fitness purposes while their children were at soccer, so that when families have one kid playing in a field at McKee Park and another one at the Sportsplex, they could safely cross the street. And so a facility that connects those two parks to each other and increases the recreation and fitness use will get maybe even more use than the Lynn Lane path, and it is something the community wants. Thanks.
And how are you feeling since your accident?
I am growing new skin
Good.
and advocating helmets.
Hi, I'm Rob Leach. I guess you guys know how I feel about the two issues before you tonight that I can represent. But I did want to share one thing before anything else, and that is I deeply appreciate Mayor Dan Camp and the Aldermen for your support of Starkville Soccer in your term of office the last 4 years. It has been really and sincerely felt by our council, by parents, by players, everyone else. And I don't want to make this, anything that comes about tonight, I don't want to make it into a negative or anything like that, because really, when you talk about 3 tournaments a year, 4 tournaments some years, when we were having no tournaments at all for 5 or 6 years before, the last 4 years that you were in office. And it's huge, having support of the council, of the aldermen and the mayor has been, we've got the ODP events that came here were literally once in a quarter century events. And so hats off to you guys. What we're all about is just creating facility that continues to be a showcase for our community so that we can proudly wear the Starkville emblems everywhere that we go in the state, and people say, man, things are really happening in Starkville. Like the comment that we got from our state president whenever he told the Tupelo guy a couple of years ago, and I relayed it to you, Mr. Mayor, that, hey, Starkville's got it going. They're going in the right direction. So anyway, we just appreciate what you've done, and we just want to continue going in that direction. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to express themselves in public? If not, we'll move on. The next item on our agenda is the public hearing on abolishing or amending ordinance 2008-5 and amending or deleting City of Starkville Code Ordinance, Chapter 2, Article 7-8 pertaining to the Park Commission. We'll now open up the public hearing in regard to that. Basically, what that means is that we would be abolishing the commission, and the folks would be converted from a commission to that of an autonomy board to that of an advisory board. Would anyone like to come up and discuss this?
Mayor, before we get started, you know, several years, 3 or 4 years ago, y'all told us we had to hire our own attorney, that City of Starkville would no longer provide the Park Commission an attorney. I have a letter here from our attorney, and his opinion, and a copy of the ordinance. And if you'll read this, it states that if you do away with the Park Commission, you do away with the 2%. Now, are y'all willing to gamble $500,000 or more just to do away with the Park Commission on your last board meeting? The yellow highlights in here. But you cannot use this money for anything other than the 2% for the park. And I don't have a little copy, you can go around everybody's little copy. Just look on the little drawing. I don't think y'all realize how much time is involved in the Park Commission. I spent probably 4 hours on the phone today from legitimate complaints, legitimate things, to my little girl didn't get to play last night in the ball game. Now, are y'all willing to take on this responsibility? Are you willing to take on this? If the Park Commission was doing a bad job, why did y'all wait till the last day of your last meeting to try to do away with it? Half of it is a grudge against me. The other half is trying to get their hands on the money. The money is designated by the Park Commission and Mr. McLaurin. He helped get this thing out from under the park thing, and y'all see what a good job we've done. Now, when we had the election down there, people saw the park, the building, that would never have seen this thing before. Every day we get people from the hospital, wellness center that has to pay to walk, older people. They come down there and walk. They're changing every day. We've got several thousand that have gone through that in the 5 weeks that we've been open. We've instigated a softball tournament for all the surrounding towns. Basketball, we've got 20-some teams in basketball. No, 30-some teams in basketball. We've got that many in, we've got 15 in softball. They come on buses from East Webster, Upola, Ackerman, Kosciuszko. When the games are over, you can go by Applebee's, you can go by Wendy's, you can go by all of these places. Those buses are there. They're paying that 2%. They are paying for our parks. And if y'all would stop and realize that you have the police department, the fire department, the sanitation department, every other department to look at, there's no way that you can take the time to do what we take on, that we do down there. Every time that phone rings right there, I answer it. I don't care if it's Mia Smith that called me yesterday and the day before and the day before that. We answer it, we talk to it. I can call y'all on the phone and some of you will call back, some of you will never call back. Not saying that you have the time, and that's probably the reason. But I want y'all to think long and hard. That's what you fit to do to the kids in this county and city and surrounding area. You can take it out, you can do what you want to, y'all gonna walk away and go home, but these kids down here are not gonna be able to do that. They're gonna be down there. I started with this thing 30-something years ago when we were playing at Southern Field over where Dr. Copeland's office is now. We had nothing. And the first board meeting I went to, we had to cancel it halfway through because it rained in the old fire station down here, and the roof leaks bad, you had to get out of there. look at what we had then and what we got now. And do you want to go out of office saying, you know, I got my lick in the last night? I don't think you do. Thank you.
Other folks?
My name is Henry Vaughn. I'm the elect alderman for Ward 7. How many parks do we have in Starkville?
How many parks?
Yeah.
Matthew?
Seven.
When
Seven
the
parks.
how much money you spent at West Side in the last 3 years, the last year? West Side doesn't even have water fountain, doesn't even have bleachers, doesn't even have lights for the kids to play basketball.
Water, it does have water fountain. If you've been over there lately,
I go over there every day and check it every day.
we
I
can leave right
guarantee
now and go show you. It was installed 3 weeks ago.
It's installed with no water coming out of it. So this is what I'm talking about. Nobody trying to abolish anything for me. You got this many parks here, but your only focus is at one park. You got more than one park in Starkville. You got George Henry Park. You got many more parks here, but your focus is at one park. That's the only thing they're trying to get you to see.
We have spent $6,000 on the swimming pool over there. We was approached that we needed more lifeguards to hire over there. We have, the only way that you can justify at all, on paper you cannot justify, but the swimming pool at J.L. King will have 5 and 6 people a day. The only reason you can justify keeping it open is when the boys ranch and people bring groups of people over there. We use that and we shuffle them over there because of if they bring 30, 40 kids over here to swim, then that's what. We spent more money on J.L. King Park this last year than we have the rest of the parks on the swimming pool and all. We've got a water fountain over there we put in. We've got play flag football over there. The whole 9 yards. It's kept up. If you ride by there, the grass is cut, it looks good, it's clean, and we keep it that way. But I think we need to do a research and all before we go making accusations that we don't know what we're talking about.
City Park not generating no revenue, no way. It's a city park.
I'm Dorothy Isaac. Good evening to everybody. Good evening to everybody. I would just like to say I'm from Attorney Perkins, Vice Mayor. Just say I'm in his ward. I would just like for y'all to know. When the park as a whole, when the park was undeveloped, I want everybody to hear me because I'm not saying I'm doing what I'm doing because out of hostility. I'm doing what I did because other children in this community. I don't want it to be a downfall like I look like I'm a failure because everybody in here know parks are operating and they're operating nice. That's what they're doing. They're operating and they're operating nicely. And I'm on the commission. I've been on the commission for a long time. I learned as I live that you're going to have different people that come into office. And they're not going to agree, with everything you were doing. That's why you run and win. Okay, but now as for the parks and the conditions of a park, right now, according to the money that we have, if everybody would look around and see, parks are operating okay. It may be some improvements that we can do. And as for these hostilities, everybody's saying I'm upset with this person and this person. Don't be upset with that. Be upset because we have public meetings up here all the time. We have public meetings at the park. We invite people to come to the park and look around. But if you would look at the best interest in the park and see the commissioners, I don't get paid for doing anything. Never have got paid for doing anything. But it's one thing that I did do. I represented for the children. It's for the children. It's not for me to go down there and get a blast about what's going on up here or what's going on with everybody else. I would just like to say, park and recreation, commissioners, whatever, however it goes tonight, whatever be done tonight. I would just like to say, just remember, you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for the parks. And just remember that. Thank you.
Next.
Yeah, Chris Taylor, I just want you to explain the difference between what the Park Commission is now and what you're requesting for the Park Commission to go to.
Right to that. Go on. Right at this point. Would any alderman like to explain that? You would? No,
After we pass
smiling. I don't know what y'all trying to do.
Where's the proposal come from? Where's it generating at?
Mr. Perkins, would you like to say anything?
Mr. Mayor, it's a public hearing. I may make some comments during the, if you get called for a vote.
Anyone else that would like to express themselves in regard to moving the commission to that of an advisory capacity?
I do have some comments I'd like to make.
Sure, go ahead. That's what it's all about.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Marquez, good to see you. Barry Sullivan's my name. I've got a son here in Starkville, very active in sports. I travel all over the United States with my job. I see sports plexes all over the place. We've got one of the best ones running. Not one of the biggest, but certainly one of the nicest. And I think that's a direct reflection on the people that are running it. And if they're managing the money we have and doing a good job, why would you want to change it? I'm a little disappointed that, nobody can tell us in this whole room right now, what is it you're trying to propose? I believe, like everything else, if you follow the money, you'll find the reason. But I would like to hear a reason or what your proposal is. But thank you.
Anyone else at this time?
My name is Steve Phillips. I live in PC's district for Alderman, and I came here not really knowing what to expect, but now I'm kind of disappointed. I don't know whether I'm for the park commission or against it. But now hearing you, and I appreciate the gentleman you spoke, I'm really kind of at a loss for why do we want to do away with the park commission. I came here to support them on behalf of not only myself, but of the Starkville Baseball Association, which I've been president and know most of you, a lot of your kids or grandkids play in that for the past 3 years. Worked great with the park commission on improving score towers, fences. We've paved the parking lot. We've put up new lights. And I know, PC, you've been president of the organization for many years, and I appreciate it. Y'all know it's vital for an organization to work that you got to have the relationship with one another, and you got to have the trust. And we've had that with the park commission. There's been a disconnect with these two organizations, the SBA and the park commission over the years. The last few years, we've grown that together. And like you said, Mr. Leach does a great thing in the city with soccer. Well, baseball wants to get there too. And we feel like the last few years, we've seen some success dealing with the park commission. Now, if that needs to be handled through the Board of Aldermen or someone else, that's fine, but I don't understand now why no one can answer these questions that we just brought up. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak at this time?
Yes, sir. I'm the current president of the Starkville Soccer Association. I've actually been coaching here for almost 20 years, SBA, SSA, SAY basketball, flag football, and the Parks and Recreation Department as a whole has gotten tremendously better. When I first started coaching soccer, we were in the airport fields and they were rough and tough, and little kids would fall in the craters down there. Now we got this beautiful complex. We're hosting all these tournaments, and we're bringing a lot of money into the city of Starkville. A lot of businesses are saying that they love it. We got sponsors going like crazy, and there's only one reason, is because of those facilities that we have. I don't want to go backwards. I want to go forward. I want to add more to that if we can. So I'm here to support the Parks and Recreation Department.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm Andrew Mack, and I'm just a parent, kids playing every sport. I just have a simple suggestion, and my simple suggestion is there are two sides to this argument, but the wrong time to make a decision is, 1 week before many members of this group are moving on. It just looks bad. It looks bad for your legacy. If this is such an important decision, you can convince the people in this room and the people in the community. And if you can't convince them, then you shouldn't be doing this 1 week before many of you are moving on. So please delay the decision, one way or the other.
Anyone else would like to speak?
I'm on the Parks Commission too. First, I just want to compliment all of you. I should have done that earlier, but I mean, I just can't imagine. I mean, I know what the Park Commission deals with, and y'all have got to be the most underpaid employees ever.
We don't know us get paid.
For what you do. But with that being said, you know, if we became an advisory board and not an autonomous group like we are, it'd make my life a lot easier, because it is a lot of work and a lot of time spent on that, as everybody said. But not just for this board, but for the people who are coming in, I think there is some benefit to having an autonomous group, although all of us were put on that board by our aldermen, which makes this even harder to understand. We are there, we all, you know, are pulling for the parks as a whole, and we're looking out for our individual awards. But I think one reason it has worked as well as it has is because while we do, we certainly take community input into consideration whenever we make a decision, we aren't under the political pressure that you all are under, so we seem to be able to do things more quickly. I just got involved with the Parks Commission in, I think, the fall of 2006, and when I got involved, they had the plans for the new building on the table, and I mean, it's built now, it's open, it's working, and I just think that's pretty amazing that we've been able to move that quickly and get things done. So I think it helps the Board of Aldermen take a little bit of heat off of y'all if it can remain autonomous like it is and allow things to move a little more quickly. I hope the future aldermen consider that too.
Anyone else?
I may be a little different animal to you all tonight. My name's Bill Whittle, and I live in Columbus. And for 3 years, my son and I have driven 52 miles round trip, 3 to 4 times a week, 10 months out of the year, for him to play ball here. And what I want you to know is if there's other people outside of Starkville looking at your program and wishing they had that program. So I don't know what the answers are. I really don't even know what all the arguments are here tonight. But what I can tell you is you've got a program that works. You've got a program that a lot of people in surrounding communities are envious of. I think soccer and baseball both, you've got a very competitive, statewide and regionally competitive program. So if I could leave with you anything tonight, just, it's not broke. Why aren't we fixing it? We wish we had this in Columbus. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Byrne, how are you tonight?
Good evening to the mayor and board. We've been together for 4 years. A lot of things, we've been the leading county, leading city in, and other people have picked up, starting with the dangerous dog order, the no smoking order, and everyone else picked up behind us. But then we were the lead. Now, a lot of people, they tear up things in the park like the fences and play stuff and fix it, tear it up again, you know. But our people is gonna wonder if my child get hurt at the park or whatever, like who don't have to get mad with? The park commission or the alderman? Let's think about like we leading city in a lot of things, and a lot of cities lead after us. Let do not make a bad reputation for ourselves.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. This time what we'll do is allow some of the board members to make comments if they would like to. Mr. Perkins, would you like to start? Right on. Well, does anyone else like to speak up?
My name is Starkville, I'm Matt Cox Ward, and I just here as a parent also to voice support for Parks and Rec Commission being maintained in the current form it is now. My son and I have had good experiences for the parks. We have a Locomont Creek Park. We participate in the swimming program there, participate in soccer and baseball. I too don't totally understand the arguments one way or another, but I don't exactly see a groundswell of support for changing anything in the community out there. I agree that maybe some things can be done better at some of the smaller parks, but I believe as a whole, the Parks and Rec Department has the children in the city of Starkville in its best interest all the time. Thank you.
Anyone else? That's about everybody in the room.
Let me say one more thing and then I'll sit down. Would y'all please read the letter and read the ordinance before you decide to vote? We cannot afford to lose. If we lose the 2% because y'all vote this out tonight, how you gonna pay for that building we got down there? You know, this is the only way to pay for it is the 2%. And, you know, we've spent a lot of time, a lot of money, and we've got one of the best things going around. Several years ago, I knew Starkville had turned the corner. When Columbus, Jeffrey Rupp was mayor, and they was putting in a new theater over there. And on the Channel 4 News, Jeffrey Rupp said, you know, this is a great thing for Columbus. Says, now then people won't have to go to Starkville to go to the movie. And I knew we had turned the corner, because I remember, and some of you that's hair as gray as mine do too, if you went to eat out at a nice restaurant, you had to go to Columbus. Now they come here. So let's don't back up now.
You're saying that the word uses is specific with commission versus advisory. Does that say anything that you can't make the commission an advisory commission? I didn't know you didn't say that. Well, I mean, you know, it's at the 2% money, but can't just go there. Wait a minute.
Board. What is it?
Well, take a look at it, you're still asking the attorney. And what you look at for. Are there other comments? I think we closed the public hearing. Everybody's had something to say about this.
Just a question. If the board changes from an autonomous group
Does
to
all
an
this,
advisory
these folks'
capacity,
concerns don't change at all? I mean, you know, you continue.
is the 2% money lost, or is it just that the 2% money then comes under the control of whoever takes it over rather than the commission?
Well, that's one of the questions I'm asking our attorney, who's had two roles. Are you our attorney and more, you the judge?
I'm the attorney until 12:01 tonight.
Okay.
12:01, I'm not there.
And so what I'm asking here is that it specifically says commission, okay? But it doesn't say anything about the commission being an advisory capacity. That's what I'm asking the attorney now. I don't disagree with what the attorney from the Park Commission has indicated, that it very clearly states in the bill that the 2% money goes to the Park Commission, 40% of it or whatever. Some of the concerns that everybody expressed in here, that we're gonna do away with the parks, that's not the case at all. We're not gonna do away with all of the activities that go on in the parks. That's not the focus. Everyone's focus in here is we're gonna do away with all that. We're gonna do away with soccer. We're gonna do away with baseball. That's not our concern to do with that. I see no change personally in the way the parks can be run.
All our concern is why are we changing? I'm not saying it's one way or the other, just why?
What's driving?
And what are we changing it to?
Ms. Marquita, that some of the concerns that we've had in regard, and I'll be frank with you, I'm noted as being pretty blunt, that when we were building this new facility, there were some questions in regard to payments that were signed off for that. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
Is that not one of the reasons that we went through a lot? It's like running down the road, and your car's running really great, and all of a sudden, the engine light comes on. You continue to run. Then you get another 50 miles down the road, and the engine quits, but you didn't do anything about it beforehand, okay? That it's not the programs. There's not any of those particular issues. This wonderful facility that we had out here, they had $250,000 overrun. Is anybody aware of that? No.
No, and we're not either.
Well, I think you came in to get you reserved in order to pay for what you didn't come in your budget.
We come in under the thing.
Not my recollection.
Mayor, if you're spending much time on that project as I did, you'd have more information on it.
That we got invoices that were not correct, other issues as such like that. Now, when you have an autonomous board, they're supposed to take care of their accounting, they're supposed to take care of all their issues as such like that, and there's been some of the issues that have gone on with the city and the commission.
If you'll check with
Very
the,
clearly,
if you'll
okay?
check with the city hall.
So
if
everything
they
you
do
hear
our
of all
accounting
this,
over here.
this rhetoric that we're here, that we're, don't fix it if it's not broke, not necessarily all the truth. You get into money issues, it'll kill you in a hurry.
Let's don't let the mayor divert us from what we're here for. Ms. Outlaw is our accountant, same one that does for the police department, city hall, and all. So, you know, if this is an issue, why are we doing like this gentleman right here said, we wait until the last minute? We want to hit our licks and run, and that's what y'all trying to do.
I would like to clear the air that this was not my agenda, okay?
But you're the mayor
I know I'm the mayor,
for a few more days.
that's right. But I'd like to clear the air, this was not my agenda for this. Some people have alluded to that fact and published in the paper, but I've not been, this not has been my agenda.
But Mayor, isn't it a policy for the city that you have 2 public hearings before you change anything like this?
This is what you said we had one last time.
This is the only first one.
All right, that clears part of the air in regard to, I think, the interest of this particular board. Do we have any other questions or answers that anyone would like to make this time? Okay, we close the public hearing at this point. Do you think that we need to say, to go into a quick executive to discuss this letter?
This letter?
Mhm.
No, this is not about potential litigation.
Okay.
It's just an opinion. I don't think it qualifies as an executive session issue.
Let's make a written motion or discuss this matter. So you might ask if anyone has a
Do we have anyone that would like a motion on the floor to discuss this matter?
Glad to talk about it. Marquita, can I ask a question of you? Yes. I know this is the 3rd time that this issue has come up over the last 4 years.
Mr. Mayor, just make a point of order, not to step on your toes, but there are rules of order. You gotta have a motion on the floor to discuss.
You gotta have a motion to discuss the thing, Richard.
I'll wait till we get board business A then. Discuss it.
No one willing to make a motion? Okay. Then we'll move on. This brings us down to, there's no business on the mayor's business, none of the board business, or consideration of amending or abolishing ordinance to B. Consideration of request from Mr. Charlie Morgan for a preliminary final plat approval of Cortland Court subdivision in an R1 zoning district located at 105 Cortland, immediately south of Sherwood Road in Ward 3.
Mayor and Board, this is a request for approval of the final plat for a 3-lot subdivision in Ward 3. 2 of the lots have already been developed. The roadway is private, will not be offered to the city for dedication. P&Z unanimously recommended approval of the final plat with 8 conditions recommended by staff. The applicant has provided a survey overlaid onto the final plat, which should be the very last page of y'all's packets to reference. It's a little light, kind of hard to read, but he provided that to maybe help explain what the dispute was amongst the neighbors. And
sorry, Ben, say that last sentence again.
The applicant has provided the very last page of y'all's packet, I think it's on the very back page there. The applicant surveyor overlaid a survey provided by the neighbor over Mr. Morgan's plat to kind of show any discrepancy. And as far as we can tell, if there's any discrepancy, it's almost non-existent. It's very hard to tell. I know that's not a good scale. I didn't have a full-size version to hand out, but there was one on the internet on the website. And I believe Mr. Morgan's here along with his surveyor, Jason Pepper, to answer any questions if y'all have something specific.
But that's not city business.
Mr. Mayor, again, a couple of questions of the attorney and the planner. Mr. Morgan has presented a plat for approval with some subdividing of land south of Sherwood Forest.
Yes, sir.
The plat and the subdividing met all city codes, ordinances, subdivision regulations, whatever might be applicable. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The city planner is saying that the particular proposal meets all city codes, ordinances, regulations, so forth, without exception. Is that correct, Mr.?
Yes, sir, other than a private street, but that's allowable.
Other than a private street?
Yes, sir.
Again, Mr. Faber, the question to you, is there any reason that the city can deny Mr. Morgan his requested plat approval, of which you are aware under existing codes, ordinances, regulations, whatever is applicable?
I will restate the same thing I said at the Park Commission, the same thing I said last time that we discussed this, that Mr. Morgan has sworn by signing that plat that he has access to a city street. And we have to accept him at his word that he does. So as far as the city's ordinances and anything that we are charged with overseeing, I don't see anything that would stand in his way as far as getting this approved. If he does not have access to a city street, as is required, that is going to be something that a court of competent jurisdiction will have to determine, not the 7 of you or not the 7 of the Planning and Zoning Commission members. And that's the same thing that I reiterated to them in their meeting.
All right, thank you. Does the possible existence of a property dispute between landowners in the area have really any bearing on the city's decision to approve or disapprove the plat?
It does not. However, this board set a precedent some time ago that in property disputes, that they weren't the same as this. It was over some ownership of a piece of land where an easement regarding utilities was involved. The board said they didn't want to get into that, but it's a different issue. But other than that, no, there's nothing that would prohibit this board, if it finds that all the city requirements are met, from going forward and approving this plat.
If a court of competent jurisdiction should sort out any property dispute, that still has no effect on the city's decision to approve or disapprove the plat.
That's correct. And it doesn't create a liability for the city because we are relying on Mr. Morgan's sworn assertion that he has access to the city street as required by our ordinances, subdivision ordinances. Correct, Ben?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
Yes.
I move approval of the preliminary and final plat of Cortland Cove subdivision in the R1 zoning district located at 105 Cortland, which is immediately south of Sherwood Road in Ward 3, with the 8 conditions recommended, and included in our package.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All have heard the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? We will now vote at this time. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Let's take a show of hands, please. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. 3. All those opposed to the motion? 4. It fails. Well, I got you on the seat there. Let's go to your next item there, and then we'll come back to this local lane purpose. You got one for approval of the Country Club Estate, Part 2, pertaining to stormwater retention. Would that not be you? Would that be
Actually,
Edward?
it's been with Mr. Kemp. We've both been involved with that, but it's really more Mr. Kemp.
Well, I just saw that it was that of a Country Club Estates thing for approval. We'll wait on that. The next item in proper order would be consideration of approval of the change in the scope of the Lynn Lane multi-purpose transportation path.
Evening, Mayor and Board. I'll be brief. This is Kevin Stafford again with Neil Schaefer. Won't go over everything we did last week again. Just wanted to let you know that we did meet with the Park Commission yesterday, and all in all, they were very supportive of the path. The only suggestions that they have is that it not connect to Sycamore Street and that it not go through the middle of McKee Park. Otherwise, they were very much in favor of the path. So I'll give you that short report. And then in your packet, I've indicated 3 potential options for the board to pursue related to this project. Number 1 is to stop all work on the project, return the grant money to MDOT. Right now, we've incurred about $80,000 in consulting and other fees and payments, so that would be our obligation thus far. Second option is to return the grant money to MDOT and then continue doing the design, environmental, and right-of-way work along the original scope of the path, which was along Lynn Lane and along Montgomery. Neil Schaefer's indicated that they think that that will require an additional $20,000 in addition to their contract for right-of-way and environmental items. The third option is to change the scope of the project, to rescope it, to essentially go through the park, as we talked about last week. And this would be an additional approximately $40,000 to basically redesign the path through the park, since it will basically be starting from scratch. So just wanted to give you the financial parameters on each of those options along with the info there. So any questions, we'll be happy to.
We'll open the floor up to board members to ask questions at this time. Yes.
Gentlemen, the key question is this September 30th, 2009 date. Is it your professional recommendation that if we select option 3, which is to have an exercise path and in and through the sportsplex and McKee Park, that we can meet the deadline?
Absolutely. I mean, right now, we have cut everything down to the bare minimum. It's gonna happen from our standpoint. Environmental and right-of-way issues go away, which is what stopped the original. We still have to do environmental at this point. Because of the right-of-way, we can move forward. The path, obviously, right now, we're asking the flexibility, which the Park Commission has approved, flexibility to obtain those topos, which we don't have right now. Like Edward said, we're backing up at this point. We've got to start all back over. So until we get the topographies and put the cost to it, we don't know where the path can go. So with that, we can get the design done by September 30th. We've talked with MDOT, and they're very cooperative with the rescoping and doing this, still accomplishing the goals. Obviously, I think y'all have in your packets, the letter from Starkville Motion, and that they support that, which is what Federal Highway wanted to see in order to approve that rescoping. That's really the biggest step, in my opinion, is getting it rescoped and approved. At that point, I've always said from the get-go, the design is the easy portion. The environmental, right-of-way, the things that go, utility relocations go along with it, it would take time. So we can still meet that September 30th.
I think as long as the board gets some direction tonight. I don't think
we have to really, I really want to start last week, but we really need to move.
I think we can delay it another week.
So just to confirm, and I'll turn the floor back over, the Park Commission has endorsed this project, and the Starkville motion of one of the members of the grant has endorsed this rescoping to create the exercise path through the parks.
That's correct.
I'll yield the floor to certainly support the rescoping and have the motion ready if that's the board's desire.
Other comments by board members?
Couple of questions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
The Park Commission said they don't want to connect to Sycamore. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So
So
now,
that,
so now we're looking at literally a ring around the parks.
I think what was agreed at their preference would be to terminate, MDOT's gonna require you to terminate at a logical location. I think one of the logical locations to terminate it would be an existing sidewalk within McKee Park, something like that. They just did not want the complete, full 10-foot wide bike and multi-use path going to the edge of their neighborhood along Madison.
And I'll add, there's a current path right now that already connects to Sycamore. And so instead of going and rebuilding that at this point, and you can still say it connects to the neighborhood, and still accomplishes, so to speak, gets the project completed.
So the connectivity is already there currently between the neighborhood and the park, and so we're talking about building a ring around the park.
And connecting to that existing. That's correct.
Right. When we were talking about paying for this, when it was going from the parks to some point down Montgomery to be determined,
Right.
what source of funds did we ID for that?
Well, as part of the bond funds, we allocated approximately $160,000 this year.
Right.
With the total obligation around $320,000. So the idea was to do half of it this year and pending approval this board, the next half next year. So total obligation about $320,000, which was our original estimate.
But out of transportation, street, drainage money, correct?
Out of, the capital improvement bond.
Made a conscious decision to connect point A to point B out of those monies, which we could have spent on drainage and or roads, correct?
That was the intent of the board.
so excuse me, I'm having difficulty hearing you talk a little bit louder.
Right, just asking, these monies were coming out of monies that we
The bond
specifically
issue, I believe,
made
is that not
a
right?
conscious decision not to spend on streets, drainage, roads, to connect point A to point B, point A being the park system with some point further down South Montgomery. Originally campus, and then we backed up from there. Originally, the project was in-kind services, and then it was a $300,000 price tag.
Right.
And now it's a $300,000 price tag to ring the parks. Well, the sports place.
Right.
I shouldn't say multiple parks, really. I just want to make sure I understand where we are right
I
now.
think that's a fair assessment.
Well, to be more accurate, it would be approximately 220-something thousand, because you've already said we've obligated for 80, is that right?
Well, part of that $300,000 included some of that will go toward that some of what we spent already will go toward that $320,000 match.
What's the total?
No, go ahead.
But the total price of this project will be $1.5 million to circle. When we finish with MDOT.
Right, it's somewhere in that
grant,
ballpark. Yes.
and then what the city will pay. We will spend $1.5 million to go from point A to point A. Thank you.
Just what our most recent sales tax collection, were we up 0.8% over last fiscal year? Sproul?
Ms. Sproul, how much we are?
I think we're about 1% up.
1% up.
Yes.
This year, Mr. Budget Chairman, when we put together the FY09 budget, which we still have another quarter to go through, would we build it on a 3%? Two. So we're 1% down, we've already got a budget deficit there. And y'all want us to commit to this, which we've been able to think about for a week, with another quarter left, with a new board, as everybody's telling us, don't do things on your last board meeting out. It's gonna have a major, potentially negative financial impact on them and their budget for last quarter of this fiscal year and going into the next fiscal year.
I'm not proposing that, I'm just throwing out options for this project too.
But y'all are saying we gotta make a decision tonight, right?
Well, yeah, one, two, or.
We can't wait for them to decide
We
what
can't
their
wait another
priorities
week
are.
and able to, and meet the September 30th deadline, according to our consultant here.
Why not?
Yeah, they're gonna make a week from now.
Right now, a lot of the, the schedule we put together, all the MDOT approvals right now, we put at 7 days. As y'all know, MDOT approvals usually take 30 to 60 days, and you also have federal highway. We believe we can get that done in 7 days. That's tight as it is right now. We're gonna be pushing on the load as it is now. With a 7-day turnaround time, we want to submit to MDOT and get approval to move to the next step. We basically can get that done. That's why the longer we wait, that it gets pushed even further. So, I mean, we're really behind the 8 ball at this point. I mean, we're looking all day, every day, weekends, so, it's really tight.
Ed, I have a few questions. First off, even though the scope of the plan has changed, we're still talking about roughly the same amount of linear feet, correct?
Yes, sir.
So even though it won't go from the sportsplex to near the campus like we originally planned, we're still gonna have roughly the same actual distance we're gonna get
Yes.
out of this path. I think one thing to take into consideration is that the one thing that's changed in the last 6 or 7 months is the scope, but not the cost. I mean, we knew back when we were discussing the bond issue back in December that we were gonna need to plan for this because we were no longer gonna be able to provide in-kind services to cover our match on this. So that's why we took into consideration the cost for this project in that discussion 6 or 7 months ago. So cost hasn't changed between now and then, correct? The thing
Right,
that's
if you
changed
remember,
now is
there was
scope.
actually a period of time where the project stopped because we could not use in-kind services and didn't have the match funds allocated, so there was no really reason to proceed, and then the funds were allocated as part of the bond.
So really, the funding issue isn't so much the question as it is the change in scope right now. And correct me if I'm wrong, but for what we would put into this, a little over $300,000, there's no way we would get this kind of project with that little bit of contribution. I mean, if we didn't have this grant, we could put, what, less than a third of that in, or?
Probably a fifth of the total project. We were used to probably less.
So it seems to me, even though this won't accomplish the goal that we had of one goal, it will accomplish another goal. And that goal was a long-term plan within the parks to have a multi-use path go around as an exercise and walking path, and will connect both our major parks in that area. Is that correct?
That it will connect both parks, and I believe it's part of their master plan. I'm not for sure about that, but I believe it is.
Okay.
And what else?
Right-of-way acquisition
Right-of-way
fees,
acquisition.
things like that shall
All
incur
those
cheaper
would,
ones.
everything that all those costs we incur will go toward our 20% match. It's also indicative of everything following exactly according to the construction schedule, that the construction costs are exactly what it will be. Some of these are all question marks, so we won't know until we get to the end. But we, according to all the preliminary calculations and using MDOT's formulas, we think that 316 is what the city's requirement is. Somewhere in that ballpark, yeah.
Even with this plan.
That's correct.
Say that last statement, Mr. Lincoln, again.
Even with this plan, because I heard something about additional engineering fees.
Additional $40,000, yeah.
So where's that coming from?
Well, again, it depends on special match, and whether or not the city will be eligible for that. We've been indicated that we will be, and the additional $40,000 would be added on to the consultant's contract to basically redesign the path through the parks. Because the path was almost completed along the original, alignment. And now, since we're changing, we'll have to go back, redo new topos, new design, all of that type thing. So additional $40,000, so that would increase the contract is for 95, so that would increase it up to 135. All of those funds, again, would be eligible for special match.
you have something you'd like to add?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Edward, it's the terms you use that keep bothering me a little bit. Would be eligible for special match. Are you saying we don't know?
That's correct.
Right. MDOT won't tell you till the end if you're eligible.
We ain't had a real good track record with those guys in the last 3 years, let me tell you.
That's among the things that continues just to nag at me about this project. We're talking 3 years ago, round numbers, with great fanfare. The project, the application, everything was announced. You know,
Right.
we were told, sitting right here, there will be no cash match. You can use in-kind service. A little later on, with, no, that's not correct. It now is a cash match. A little later on, the working out of the situation with property owners in Sherwood Commons that were, in their minds, affected by the project. We flipped sides of the roads, we did all this. Then, a little later on, last board meeting, out of the clear blue, we don't have time to do that. More complicated than we thought. Now we need to do this so we won't lose the grant. We're told tonight that certain things may be eligible toward the city's match. We're told, need another $40,000 on engineering. I just have considerable difficulty with this whole project as it has progressed from then to now. I cannot help but think that there was really nobody in the city with the responsibility of monitoring this project from the city side and keeping close tabs on what was occurring. I have known Hibbett Neal for many years, a friend of mine. Neal Schaefer Engineering is a well-known firm. I do not understand what the engineers, the firm has been doing all these months and years. And then all of a sudden, boom, out of the clear blue at the last meeting, we got to change, so we won't lose the grant. Devon of Starkville in Motion talks about, as did I see quotes in the paper, of connectivity and all this type of thing. We just determined tonight that the connectivity that they're talking about is already there. It just makes it sound better to continue to talk about connectivity. It's there, but it's not there, actually, but yet another story. We talk about all these things. A walking path around the parks would be a fantastic thing. Certainly nobody would argue that. Nobody would argue that. The Park Commission, certainly, and I served as a member of the Park Commission once upon a time, would love to see someone else pay and construct a walking path around the park. Somebody else's money, so to speak, not P&R money. And so I just get more and more puzzled about this whole project. Adding one more factor, we're talking of 316, 20,000, another 40. The next Board of Aldermen, whether they realize it or not, is going to have a very, very tight budget year. What would be their decision on this matter? Do we really want to take 300 plus 40, round numbers, $1,000 out of city money for a budget that's going to be very tight and put on this to keep the grant? I'm not sure what their answer might be. And we're saying, got to decide tonight. You know, we talked a minute ago about don't need to be making any decisions this close to the end. Here's a major decision this close to the end. And along that line, there are some boards of aldermen in the state that if a number not coming back, they sort of just coast on out that last month. Collect their check, don't talk about much of anything, don't do anything. That simply is not the Starkville way. I just am puzzled. On the one hand, I would like to move it to the next Board of Aldermen to decide. Do we want to spend out of a tight budget, $300,000 plus the 40, plus the 16, plus whatever it is, on this project just to avoid not losing a grant, which, yes, will construct a nice walking path around the parks. All the original stuff about connecting neighborhoods and so forth, all this is gone. All the original stuff about connecting to the university, all this is gone. It's just perhaps the most worrisome project to me that we've had in this term. And I just do not understand how these things happen.
Anyone else? Roy, any words?
Not at this point.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Are you absolutely saying that there's no way a firm like Neil Schaefer can do what's required if this is put off one more week?
We can do all we can. I mean, I'll make as many, I know, promise the world, and that's what we'll try to do. And I do want to address one comment, I guess, that you did make. Our contract was not received until July 16th of '08 and executed. And that's when we were started. And we worked for 3 months and we're stopped for 5 months. And we're started again in March of this year, March 3rd. So collectively, of the 3 years, we've only had, including today, roughly 10 months to work on this entire project with all the changes that we've had. So it's not that we've been working on it 3 years by all means. You know, we obviously would have that done. At this point, you know, moving forward, we hope we can get this rescope and finished in the time. I know we can do it within the time, but I know keep backing up week after week. It gets tighter and tighter. Like I said, MDOT review times of 7 days is unheard of. So, I mean, like I said, I can promise the world, but we do need a decision as soon as possible.
And you realize it was quite a surprise to us a week ago.
Oh, I
To hear
understand.
for the first time,
I understand.
anything about this change.
Or do you have any motions at this time?
Yes, sir, if I may be recognized.
You may.
This is an important issue, and it's not looking back at all the problems that we've had in the city. It's about looking forward and what's right for Starkville. This is a $1.2 million grant that's coming to the city of Starkville. This is something that was included in the bond issue, that we went out and borrowed money, and we went out and sold to the community to gain different people's support for that bond issue specific to this exercise path. So, excuse me, I'd move that we approve the change of scope to reroute the exercise path into McKee Park and the Sportsplex with the intention of meeting our September 30th, 2009 deadline.
Do we have a second?
I'll second, but I do have a follow-up question, if I may. If we do go ahead and approve this now, and because there's been some talk about the next board and the burden this may or may not put on them, if it's their decision that they really don't like this, would it be too late for them to create a motion to stop the project? To at least let us go ahead and get started now, so that a week from now, when we have a first meeting of the next board, if it is the decision of that board not to proceed with it, then we have.
Next board do whatever the heck they want to do.
They can return the bond proceeds if that's their decision.
I mean, they can do anything they want to do. You're gonna be on the next board, so you can do whatever you want to do.
I was just trying to
Do we
address-
have any more discussion? We have a motion and a second. We'll vote. All those in favor of the motion to proceed with this, raise your hand, please. All those opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Edward, go ahead, let's take care of this stormwater thing, and we'll do one other, we'll take a quick break.
I've kind of provided a timeline on the project from what I understand in my conversations with Bill Webb. I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can on this.
So did he agree basically that this is grandfathered in under the previous drawings and commitments, et cetera?
When I talked to Mr. Webb last week, he was not aware that the preliminary plat was approved after the stormwater ordinance. He was under the impression that the preliminary plat was approved prior to.
Prior to that, so it would be somewhat grandfathered in, basically, in his interpretation.
Yeah, but when we went back and looked at the records, it was actually accurate.
Board?
Mr. Mayor and Board, with regard to this particular project, this is one of these that falls into a somewhat gray, never land. Considerable amount of work was done and a plat approved with the former city engineer who interpreted the stormwater provisions in a certain way. A change in engineers, a change in interpretation, the board talked about that. I just don't really think it's right to hold someone in that gray area to things that they were not anticipating from the very beginning. I would move that Country Club Estates Part 2 be approved without the new stormwater drainage requirements made applicable to it.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Thank you. Yeah, let's take a break and come back with it.
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your health care needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in health care.
We'll wait on it. Get back in here before we start the next controversy. We'll move to item E, consideration of the authority to engage outside contract information technology. Ms. Brewer, I think you have a handle on that.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have one IT person, as the board knows, and he is about to take family medical leave. And we're going to be needing some assistance. And while he is gone, we've interviewed Mr. Boyd and Al Quinn, our IT manager, and interviewed 3 computer companies, Starkville Computers and Synergetics. And No Sky Solutions, and No Sky said this was not something that they were comfortable doing for us. They were more of a planning organization. Starkville Computers and Synergetics both provided plans, and your board packet indicates the Synergetics plan, but I received an email today from Starkville Computers that was competitive. And so I requested the board look at this item with the thought that they add Starkville Computers as an option for us. So if we need need them quickly and we can't get hold of one, we have the option of getting in touch with the other. And Mr. Quinn indicates that he thought it might not be much more than a total of 20 hours that we might need them over his, I think it's 6 weeks, is it not, Randy? Undetermined, but he's projecting about 6 week absence from us. And as all y'all know who've been in City Hall from time to time, there's not a day goes by that Mr. Quinn is not paged in some form or another throughout the building for his expertise. So I anticipate we may be needing some of those services. So I would just ask that the board consider authorizing us to use either one of those companies as we regularly get in touch with them, as they can respond to us.
Are you asking for authorization just for this upcoming absence?
Well, until the next board sits and determines how we want to spend, what our budget will be, right now we have only one IT person. So if Al were to get sick or were to, have to have some leave or go on vacation, as people do, then yes, sometime beyond this, if we could, until we determine how we're going to handle perhaps a second IT person.
Okay. All right.
I would move then that the city be authorized to, for IT needs, no specified time period, the next mayor board can decide whether or not to end this or continue it, because there's always needs with our IT people gone sick, on vacation, all that type of thing. That I move that we would first contact the apparent lowest and best bid, Synergetics, for IT services. And if Synergetics,
I don't think, based on what's on the table, that they were the lowest.
And I just received that today, so I put
that's
that
a
in front of
second
you.
bid.
Did they submit an agreement
So there's a contract associated with that.
with computers? I didn't see one for Synergetics.
No, I don't think Synergetics submitted
Okay,
it,
well-
they did not.
Alderman, I would ask that you make it subject to us entering into a valid agreement with both companies, because the contract that was submitted by Starkville Computers, I can't advise the board, the mayor to sign it, because there's some things, as you know, there's some things that we just can't have in the contract.
I understand, and that's exactly what I was gonna do, but
Okay.
thank you for the reminder of that. First, that, again, would move that Synergetics be contacted first for provision of IT services to the city, should Synergetics not be able to respond in a timely manner as determined by the city. That Starkville Computers then be contacted for their IT services. And all of this conditional upon the city entering into an acceptable contract, acceptable to the city attorney, for these IT services.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor of the motion say aye, and the motion and second, all those in favor say aye, please.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Passes. Okay. This brings us back up to item A on board business. Item A is consideration of amending or abolishing ordinance 2008-5 and amending or deleting City of Starkville Code Ordinances, Chapter 2, Article 8, pertaining to the Park Commission.
Okay, I had a quick question, if you don't mind. Since
Go
there had
ahead.
been some discussion previously over the Park Commission itself and it as an autonomous organization versus an advisory one. And what I was gonna ask earlier, Ms. Outlaw, of you, was, I know this has come up about 3 times or so within the last 4 years. And the reason it got brought up originally was over the issue of the city providing services to an organization that's supposed to be autonomous from us. And I was wondering if you could kind of enumerate what sort of services the city is or has been providing to the Park Commission.
We have the accounting, we're doing the accounting, payroll, payables. They're still included with the city's insurance, workers' comp. I mean, all of the administrative functions are still with the city.
And as an autonomous commission, are we allowed to provide that to them? I mean, is that permissible?
That was the whole thing back a couple of years ago, was trying to find a way that we could do that and have leave them autonomous. And whereas the parks attorney has said, you know, that's good. The state auditor has been, the only thing that he would tell me was, you have a mess. That's all he would tell me.
Well, that's back when we were approving their claims, is when he said that, because you and I spoke to the same gentleman.
Right, and
he
since
said-
then,
Actually, the point is this: the city can provide in-kind services as part of our appropriation to the Park Commission as we see fit, outside of receiving what they order, actually receiving it, and paying the claims, because they are liable for those. and we don't receive their goods from Park and Rec, they order, they receive, they pay their claims. That's the only thing that we can't do as an in-kind service to them under state law. And that was the whole point of that discussion, the second discussion we had, because this is actually third time this has come up.
Right. Well, now,
And actually, the second time it came up, it wasn't to abolish, it was just to define roles and responsibilities.
That's right.
The first time it came up for discussion was to abolish them, and now we're back on it again some 3 years later. But
well, no, and the only thing, my conversation with the state auditor, and that's what he told me, you have a miss.
Right.
And we just left it at that.
but we have
tried
worked to
and
clean
we
up
tried
that
to
mess
deal
since
with it.
that point, have we not, Marquis?
We've done what?
Worked to clean that mess up.
We have worked to
not?
clean it up. Is it clean? No.
But you're continuously working on it.
We're continuously working on it, and we will work on it. That's, you're right.
All right.
Go ahead.
Did this board approve that a policy that if we hold 2 public hearings, then we can consider making a change on the ordinance? Or was it 1 public hearing?
Ms. Brewer, you're our policy expert.
Yes, sir, the policy was 2 public hearings, and it allowed for a feature that if the board determined the need arose otherwise, that they could do so, but it's a policy. It wasn't an ordinance, it was a policy.
I understand.
Yes.
But therefore, that's true. I move that we table this matter to the next board and let them hold a public hearing on this same issue at their first meeting.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion on that motion?
Not debatable. It's not debatable.
It's not debatable. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those that are in favor of it, raise your hands. All those opposed of it, raise your hands. Motion fails. Further discussion.
Marquita, another concern I had was duplication of services. Right now, as an autonomous board, the Park Commission has its own attorney, correct?
That's correct.
If it were to become an advisory board, then would they be subject to being able to use the legal services of the city attorney?
That's correct.
And would therefore no longer need to have a separate attorney? And would there be any other instances of duplication that could help be eliminated through that?
Where
Or would it solve some of the concerns of
the only-
uncertainty over what responsibilities your office has?
Exactly. That's what would clear up for us is, right now, we have to run payables twice, because we have to run it for the parks and then we run the city's payables. And so a lot of things that we do it would minimize some of the tasks that we have to perform for them.
Any questions, other questions? Yes.
Just one for Mr. Favor, because Alderman Coy just mentioned the attorney again, and we have an opinion from Mr. McAlpin that I seem to remember being consistent with the previous opinion that was received from this board, that if we abolish or disestablish the Park Commission, that we would have to work with Jackson to introduce a local and private bill to allow us to continue to utilize that 2% money. Do you concur with that legal opinion that the Park Commission's attorney has provided?
I can't assure the board that if this park commission is changed from the status of park commission as it exists to an advisory board, that the park commission, the city, will continue to receive the money as allocated in House Bill 1833 as it currently stands, without any amendment.
Nor, I assume, Mr. Favor, can you give the city assurance that if it did change, the 2% would not continue?
I cannot say that definitively, no, I cannot. But I can't assure the board. That's what I think Alderman Cox was asking me, and I can't assure the board that you would continue to receive that money without amendment to House Bill 1833.
Nor can you assure the board that you wouldn't continue to receive the money?
I cannot assure the board that either.
I guess the salient point is that we don't know.
We do not know.
And that-
And that's why I use the word sure.
Right, and that's what I guess their attorney has researched this and provided, I realize you haven't seen all this.
I haven't, but I know that we looked at this 2 years ago, and there is in the statute a delineation between Park Commission and Advisory Board. I do know that, because we did look at this a couple of years ago, but as Alderman McLaurin says, I can't assure the board
One way or the other.
you can't.
Right.
And until it's done, until the Attorney General's office opines on this, nobody can be assured. There's no opinion that I know of. I don't remember one that specifically speaks to this particular issue.
And last question, but you are stating that there is very clear state law on what is defined as a Starkville Park Commission, as well as what is an advisory commission. They're two different entities. And the wording that is in this current House bill says Starkville Park Commission.
Only correction I had, you said state law says Starkville Park Commission, but
Right.
it says
Park
Park
Commission.
Commission.
Right.
And it specifically has a statute, defines what a park commission is. This one, this bill, House Bill 1833, says Park Commission. And it specifically delineates what that is to be used for, that being the money that's received. So that is true. There is a distinction in the statutes between advisory park commission.
Other questions? Do we have a motion to table this, or proceed with this, or what?
Mayor and Board, I would like us to move forward with this. And if I'm not mistaken, it would require two motions then to do so. One to, in essence, just making sure I'm doing this properly, to abolish the Park Commission. But then a second one to recreate it as an advisory Park Commission.
Actually, I think you need a third motion to set aside city policy or deem that there is a need to bypass the second public hearing to change ordinance to begin with, and then once you get past that, you could make the motion.
And it would be to repeal ordinance number 2008, whatever it is, as opposed to abolish 2008-5. It'll be, if that's what the board is inclined to do, you would need a motion to repeal the ordinance.
Does our
Then you'd
public
have to
hearing
have-
policy require a motion to?
Let's talk about policy a minute. This rule was lengthy, but perhaps not as clear on this. If you will recall the policy, if you look at it, it establishes the desirability of the two public hearings. It reserves to the Board of Aldermen the right to alter that anytime it sees fit, for whatever reason.
So then it'd be a question whether he needs to make a motion to do away with that, with your statement in regard to it. Is that right?
Certainly could. Doesn't have to.
Doesn't have to.
Mayor and Board, then I would make a motion then of repealing ordinance 2008-5 and replacing it with ordinance 2009- whichever number we're on this year. An ordinance creating the City of Starkville Park Commission as an advisory body and providing for the authority thereof.
Alderman Corey, to be sure I understand what you're saying, you asked a moment ago, was it necessary for two ordinances? And so if that is your motion, I'm assuming you were taking those one at a time,
Well, if we need to do them separately, I'll be glad to.
would need to do separately if that is your intention.
All right, would then make a motion to repeal ordinance 2008-5.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion with a second. We will now vote on that particular motion. All those,
Mr. Mayor, excuse me,
yes.
before you call, now we actually, under our rules of parliamentary procedure, are at a point to have discussion on the motion. I'd
If you
to
would
make
like
some
to, Mr.
comments.
Davis,
Thank
go
you,
ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I
I
appreciate that.
know, go ahead.
I was against this 3 years ago when we talked about this. I'm against it tonight, and there are several reasons for that. Number one is practical reason. as a member of this board for 2 terms, the last thing I would have wanted would have been to take all the calls that Mr. Moreland has talked about, and that when Scott Maynard was the chairman, I was privileged to hear about, as far as toilet paper running out the bathroom during the soccer tournament, or why didn't the concession stand open during this baseball game? Why didn't Johnny play last night? Why didn't he make the All-Star team? We all know we get enough phone calls. They've done a good job handling those requests and insulating the Board of Aldermen from them. The second gets back to this legal issue of Park Commission, Advisory Commission, 2% tax. This board, the next board, whoever, the governing authorities of the city of Starkville may be at whatever time, have the authority to abolish this Park Commission, make them advisory. There's Attorney General opinions that clearly state that, not arguing that point. But when you look at House Bill 1833, the 2004 regular session, as Attorney McAlpin has pointed out, there's language which doesn't specifically track the definition of a park commission as laid out in section 213733, but it is very close. I would be very scared to take this action and jeopardize that money. If it is something that a majority of this board would like to do, or a majority of the next board would like to do, I would ask them to at least seek an official Attorney General's opinion on the legislative intent and definition of what Starkville Park Commission means in that specific legislation, House Bill 1833, and then go from there, rather than going from a position of, well, maybe, maybe not, I don't know. I still don't think it's a good idea, but at least then you know what you're talking about with the money. And I think it would be very foolish for us tonight to make this action without that information. I'll say it one more time, I still think it's a bad idea for us to do in general, but that only makes it a worse idea. So with that, I'll yield the floor, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any other members of the board that would like to make a statement this time about the motion? You would?
Mr. Mayor, Board, a number of things come to mind in this particular discussion. Also, points raised by my colleague, Alderman Davis. I was present at creation, so to speak, the creation of the Park Commission. I wrote the ordinance that created the Park Commission. The then sitting Board of Aldermen did it for one main purpose. The budget at that particular time was very, very small, pitifully small for Parks and Recreation. The switch to a Park Commission allowed the city to add on 2 mills of tax to go toward the funding of Park and Recreation activities in the community. That was the primary reason that the Park Commission was created. The Park Commission has, over the city's history, the Park and Recreation Department has, over the city's history, operated very effectively as a regular city department. It could do so again. We have a newly appointed Park and Recreation Director that I suspect will do an outstanding job. The practical reasons and so forth that Alderman Davis was talking about, an advisory Park Commission can still deal with those same things. An advisory Park Commission can still manage the day-to-day operations of the parks, just as they have final authority and decision-making on matters brought to the board, recommendations for personnel, recommendations for budget, and so forth, would rest with the Board of Aldermen. This is where I get into a philosophical discussion I have had with myself, so to speak, for a number of years. The park and recreation activities of the city now approximate, round numbers, not counting 2%, $1 million. I have some difficulty now in saddling a volunteer board, though they are doing a good job and could do so as an advisory park commission, saddling them with the responsibility and liability of this $1 million. The operation of the city, slow sometimes, inefficient sometimes, but I view as cogs in a wheel. They've all got to turn together. Therefore, I think it is the elected representative body of the city, the Board of Aldermen, that should make those decisions and make sure that all the cogs in the wheel are turning together and meshing as efficiently as they possibly can. And this, of course, can happen with an advisory park commission. The city attorney said that no one can say it will hurt the 2%. Nobody can say it won't hurt the 2%. Don't know for sure. I do know, having read the second ordinance creating the advisory park commission, that the ordinance tracks as much as is humanly possible the language of the local and private legislation establishing the 2% to the park commission. It does, that local and private legislation does not talk about an autonomous park commission. It does not talk about an autonomous park commission created under 2137-33 of the code. It talks about a park commission. I think personally that it's time that the city pay attention to all these cogs in the wheel. It's why for years we have resisted what my friend Ed Hadaway has recommended in earlier occasions, a utilities commission that Columbus has, to our gentleman from Columbus, an autonomous body that sets the rates, that does whatever it wants to with regard to utilities in Columbus. I do not think that should be the purview of an autonomous body. I think that should be the purview of the elected, in Columbus's case, city council, in our case, the Board of Aldermen. One of our major advisory bodies, the Planning and Zoning Commission, is advisory, has enormous responsibility, and functions very, very well. Likewise, can an advisory park commission function for the city in the same fashion?
Anyone else?
Just a comment on the practicality of the matter, since Mr. McLaurin brought up planning and zoning as an advisory body, which they are, and they work very hard on our behalf, but I would not say that they insulate us from comments and or complaints and or long hours spent around this table dealing with their matters.
Mayor, may I?
It's getting interesting.
A Board of Aldermen is never insulated from anything.
They're not, but this.
Mayor, can I make a statement?
No, sir, this is between the board here.
That is 100% accurate. However, I think that the Park Commission has done a wonderful job in handling their business and insulating us and insulating the Parks and Rec programs from the politics of this table to the best of their ability, and they have done a very admirable job at that.
And I agree, as I indicated, with the good job that they've done, which they can continue to do as an advisory body. I call the question.
Okay, you hear the motion, question's been called. All in favor of the motion, raise your hand. All those opposed to the motion, raise your hand. First motion carries. Richard, would you like to make your second motion?
Mayor and Board, I move approval of ordinance number 2009 Marquita, do you know which number we're on? This An ordinance creating the City of Starkville Park Commission as an advisory body and providing for the authority thereof.
Second.
Motion with a second. Are there discussions on the second part of the motion?
On our agenda tonight, we have a consideration of amending or abolishing the Park Commission, which by 4-3 vote the board did. There is not this agenda item to create an advisory Park Commission on our agenda, and again would violate our board policy since we've not had the required number of public hearings for this matter.
Are there other statements?
Ms. May, I would repeat that the board policy allows the board of aldermen, if it chooses to deviate from this required to public hearings. And to Alderman Cox's matter about anything not being on the agenda, we learned early on that any alderman can do anything, anytime, whether it's on the agenda, not on the agenda, whatever. But specifically, if you will read number 8, consideration of amending or abolishing ordinance so-and-so, which Alderman Torres' motion just passed, and amending or deleting City of Starkville Code of Ordinances pertaining to the Park Commission, which is getting to the rest of the body of ordinances pertaining to the park.
Is there further discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor of this second motion, please raise your hand. All those opposed? The motion passes.
All right, Mr. May, I have a subsequent motion.
Okay.
That Alderman Cox does not appear on the agenda. I would move that the existing members of the just abolished Park and Recreation Commission be made advisory members of the new Park Commission with the same terms and so forth that are presently in place.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Thank you. I believe that covers our agenda this evening. Roy? Do we have an executive session? We got something on the agenda?
Mayor and Board, I would move approval of the consent agenda as enumerated by the city.
Do we have a second to approval of the consent agenda? All those in favor say aye. Do I hear a motion to go to a closed session to discuss? I don't know what's on the litigation potential.
Since how was I gonna have an attorney in about 5 hours, 4.5 hours? I don't know why we lost the litigation.
Huh?
Personnel matter.
Personnel matter.
Yes, sir. Personnel matter.
So moved that we go to closed session.
Personnel matter. We've got a motion moved to go to closed session, discuss the personnel matter.
To discuss whether or not
Need for one, yeah. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Will the rest of them get out of here, please? Thank you.